The morning the country's most respected CEO ignored 20 world-famous consultants and placed her trust in a tired single father wearing a faded blue work shirt, everyone inside the glass tower believed they were witnessing the biggest mistake in corporate history. The financial news channels were already predicting the collapse of her billion-dollar company. Investors waited for disaster. Executives whispered behind closed doors. Yet no one realized that wisdom sometimes arrives without expensive suits, polished presentations, or impressive titles. Sometimes it arrives carrying a lunchbox, worrying about school pickup, and quietly seeing what everyone else has missed. Before this story begins, take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who still believes kindness changes lives, and subscribe to Lifeline Tales. If you believe that ordinary people can make extraordinary differences, then this story is for you. The company was called North River Industries, one of the largest manufacturing businesses in the country. Its headquarters overlooked a bright city skyline where every sunrise reflected from hundreds of windows like sheets of gold. The woman leading the company was Maren Caldwell, a CEO admired for building an empire through determination rather than inheritance. She had spent 25 years climbing every step herself, surviving recessions, betrayals, and impossible negotiations. But nothing had prepared her for the crisis threatening the company now. Sales had dropped for 3 straight years. Overseas competitors were undercutting prices, factories were operating below capacity, and shareholders demanded immediate action. The board hired 20 elite consultants from the world's most prestigious firms. They arrived with glossy presentations, complicated charts, expensive watches, and absolute confidence. After weeks of analysis, every one of them reached the same conclusion. Close the oldest factory. Lay off nearly 1,200 workers. Sell the land. Cut costs. Protect profits. According to every spreadsheet, it was the only logical answer. That factory, however, was more than concrete walls and aging machinery. It stood in the middle of a quiet town where generations of families had built their lives around it. Parents worked beside their grown children. Grandparents still remembered the first brick being laid decades earlier. Local stores, schools, and small businesses depended on the salaries earned there. Closing it would not simply eliminate jobs. It would slowly erase an entire community. Maren understood this better than anyone, yet logic surrounded her from every direction. Every advisor warned that emotion had no place in business. They reminded her that leadership required hard choices. Even her closest executives quietly encouraged her to sign the closure documents before the markets opened on Monday. On a bright Thursday morning, Maren decided to visit the factory one last time before making the final decision. She wanted to see with her own eyes what she was about to end. Cameras followed her arrival, reporters waited outside the gates, and managers nervously prepared speeches explaining production numbers. Everyone expected another carefully managed executive tour. Instead, Maren wandered away from the planned route, walking through noisy assembly lines filled with the smell of metal, machine oil, and warm sunlight pouring through tall factory windows. She noticed employees working with quiet pride despite rumors that their livelihoods were disappearing. She also noticed something the consultants had completely ignored. The workers were constantly stopping production to walk long distances for replacement parts stored in different sections of the building. Minutes disappeared every hour. Hundreds of tiny delays quietly became thousands of wasted hours each month. One man watched everything without saying much. His name was Elias Rowan. He was 42 years old, raising his 10-year-old daughter alone after losing his wife to illness several years earlier. Every morning began before sunrise as he packed lunches, braided his daughter's hair the best he could, and hurried her to school before arriving at the factory. His clothes were always clean but worn from years of hard work. Most executives never noticed him. Yet he noticed everything around him because survival had taught him that details mattered. When Maren paused near his workstation, Elias simply continued working. He had no interest in impressing important visitors. But something about the exhausted look in the CEO's eyes reminded him of his own reflection after long nights worrying about bills and his daughter's future. He sensed she carried a burden heavier than business reports. As Marin observed the production line, Elias quietly explained that the factory was not failing because its people lacked ability. It was failing because the system forced talented workers to waste their energy solving problems created by poor planning years earlier. He described how supplies traveled farther than finished products, how outdated scheduling caused unnecessary downtime, and how experienced workers had repeatedly suggested practical improvements that were never heard because nobody asked them. He never criticized anyone. He simply described reality through the eyes of someone living it every single day. Those simple observations lingered in Marin's mind far longer than the consultant's polished presentations. Instead of returning to headquarters immediately, she spent the rest of the day speaking with mechanics, forklift drivers, cleaners, maintenance staff, and machine operators. Their stories matched Elias's observations almost perfectly. None of them asked for sympathy. None demanded impossible investments. They only wished someone would finally listen before deciding their future. The following morning, Marin surprised everyone by delaying the board's vote. The consultants reacted with disbelief. Some argued that listening to factory workers instead of professionals was irresponsible. Others warned that investors would punish hesitation. Television commentators criticized her uncertainty. Headlines questioned whether compassion had clouded her judgment. Yet Marin remained calm. She requested one final proposal, not from the consulting firms but from the employees themselves. Over the next week, something extraordinary happened. Instead of preparing farewell speeches, workers gathered during lunch breaks with notebooks filled with practical ideas. Engineers collaborated with janitors. Supervisors listened to apprentices. Veterans who had spent 30 years inside those walls finally felt their voices mattered. Elias became an unexpected organizer, encouraging everyone to contribute regardless of position. His evenings became even longer as he balanced homework with his daughter, household chores, and reviewing suggestions from co-workers. Though exhausted, he believed hope deserved effort. The employee proposal looked nothing like the consultant's glossy reports. It contained hand-drawn maps, simple calculations, realistic timelines, and countless observations from people performing the work every day. They proposed reorganizing storage areas, redesigning production flow, introducing cross-training between departments, modernizing only essential equipment, and rewarding employees whose ideas improved efficiency. Most importantly, they believed the factory could become profitable without sacrificing families. Marin presented both plans to the board. 20 consultants recommended abandonment. Hundreds of workers recommended transformation. The room fell silent as she explained that numbers mattered, but numbers without understanding created expensive mistakes. She admitted that every consultant possessed extraordinary intelligence, yet none had asked the people whose hands actually built the products. Leadership, she said, was not about always having answers. It was about knowing where to find them. The board reluctantly approved a 6-month trial. Financial analysts mocked the decision almost instantly. Investors expected failure. Employees, however, arrived every morning with renewed purpose. The atmosphere inside the factory changed completely. Waste slowly disappeared. Production became smoother. Departments that once blamed each other began solving problems together. Small improvements accumulated into remarkable results. Within 3 months, operating costs dropped dramatically without a single mass layoff. Orders increased because delivery times improved. Customers noticed better quality. What consultants believed impossible quietly became reality through thousands of ordinary acts of cooperation. Elias never sought recognition. Every evening he still rushed home to cook dinner, help his daughter with school projects, and prepare for another early morning. One afternoon, Marin unexpectedly visited his modest house after learning about his daily routine. She saw a home filled not with luxury but with warmth. School drawings covered the refrigerator. Books borrowed from the public library filled old shelves. A small garden grew beside the porch because Elias wanted his daughter to believe beautiful things could grow anywhere with patience. Maren realized the same philosophy had saved her company. Months later, North River Industries announced its strongest financial recovery in nearly a decade. The factory everyone wanted to abandon became the company's most efficient operation. Business schools began studying the transformation. Ironically, many consultants later admitted they had overlooked the human knowledge already present inside the organization. Maren publicly credited the employees instead of taking personal glory. During a company celebration held under bright afternoon sunshine, she introduced Elias not as a hero who rescued a corporation but as proof that wisdom does not belong only to titles. As applause echoed across the factory yard, Elias looked toward the crowd and saw his daughter smiling proudly from the front row. In that quiet moment, every early morning, every sacrifice, and every difficult day suddenly felt worthwhile. Success had never been about becoming famous. It had always been about creating a future where his daughter could believe kindness, honesty, and hard work still mattered. If this story has touched your heart so far, please like this video, share it with your family and friends, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Lifeline Tales so more inspiring stories can reach people who need hope today.